Partnerships, and I am here today to present to you the Clog the Drain webinar. So first of all, what I would love is if you have tuned in, tell me that you're here and where you're from in the comments. So that'll be great. All right, let's see. Who is here with me today? Go ahead and put your stuff in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. Like I said, I'm Julie Ford. My company is Julz of Life. I'm a coach, a speaker, a trainer, and I am the author of a book called Creating Time and Energy, a foundational workbook for scattered parents. And if you're a parent, you've been scattered every once in a while, maybe a couple of times already this morning, if not a couple of times a week. So first, I am a mom of two girls, two great girls. They are almost 13 and 15 right now. I'm the wife of Rico, and often you'll see him on Parenting Partnerships. He's very active. And we live with our two dogs on a tree farm in southern Wisconsin. So it's a gorgeous place to live, and we have a lot of fun here. So if you come on or you're watching the replay, definitely put your name, where you're from, and what brought you here today in the comments, because we want to hear from you. So one of the things that I have really worked on is talking with people, all over and getting their ideas about parenting. And when I do that, I'm introducing myself and I ask people how they're doing. And a really common answer is, I'm crazy busy. And so we talk about that. And for a while, I was really on that bandwagon too. And, we'd stand in a parking lot and we would actually exchange badges of busy. And what I mean by the badge of busy is we'd stand there in, after school pickup, or we would, stand in the grocery store talking about, well, I've got this and I've got this and I've got this. And they would, counter with, well, I've got this and I've got this and I've got this. And well, then I have this and this and this. And I just don't even know where I'm going to breathe or pee. And that's what I call the badge of busy. It just kind of gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I ask folks, well, how's that working for you? Because I came to a point in my life where I'm like, this isn't working. I don't want to be in competition for how little time and energy I have available for myself, for enjoying life, for enjoying my kids, my family. And so I started asking people, is that working? How's it working out for you? And we're working more towards, how do we find those pieces of time where we can be intentionally present, really completely focused. And this week in Parenting Partnerships, we had so many people talking about that in their interviews, that, what's the one thing that people could do to be more present, but not perfect. And I think sometimes when we're stuffing all of the activities in, we're trying to be that perfect parent to give our kids that perfect upbringing so that they don't miss a single opportunity whatsoever. And we jam pack everything in so that we don't miss it, and we end up missing it. So how can we be, and what I mean by that is we're not actually being present with what's going on in their lives. We have very little, my husband says, boom, intentionally present. Definitely, Rico, definitely. The whites of their eyes time. I remember describing that to a colleague of mine. So what you're looking for, I said to her, because she was lamenting, she had really little kids. They were a year and 3 years old. And she's like, I just don't get to spend the time with them. I'm there driving them around. I'm there, putting them to bed, but I'm not there. And I haven't really talked to them. And I said, it's been a while since you've seen the whites of their eyes. And there was just silence on the other end of the line. And she was really thinking about what that meant. And it brought tears to her eyes. So she was having trouble talking when I mentioned that. Whites of their eyes time. I know Julian has talked about it, and all the men and women that we've talked to this week have talked about definitely carve out, even if it's 15 minutes. And I hear some of you saying, 15 minutes? I don't have time to breathe or pee. So I can't find that 15 minutes. hopefully you're here, you're either catching the replay or you're live with me to figure out how to find that. So one of the first things that we want to do is look at some of the things that we're tolerating that's taking some of our spare time and energy very, very unnecessarily. So one of those first things would be the tolerations. What are we tolerating? And I often use the example of a pair of socks. They're not your socks. They're on the living room floor. They don't belong on the living room floor, but either you're trying to teach somebody that that's not the way it's supposed to happen, or you're just thinking, hey, that's not my job. I'm not supposed to do that. As parents, a lot of times we're teaching someone, I don't want to pick that up because I want to see how long it takes for somebody to pick that up because those aren't my socks. And so it kind of goes like that. But every time you see those socks, it takes a little time and energy. And by that, you might be saying, well, what do you mean it doesn't take any of my time? I just see it. But in your mind is playing, those aren't my socks. I wonder how long it's going to be before those socks get picked up. And then you start going in some other squirrel place about, oh my gosh, all of these things are, there are socks here, there are dishes there, there's other stuff here. At work, it might be, well, there's a pile of this that my colleague hasn't taken care of. And, that thing isn't fixed. And so it can start this flurry of energy being taken up. And when your energy there is occupied, then you're not efficient when you're using your time someplace else. You're multitasking without even knowing it. So these key things can drain you. So I'm wondering right now, what's coming up for you? What's draining you right now? The what's draining you activity was one of the very first activities that I ever did being a client of coaching before I ever became a coach. And it was when I was at Arthur Andersen, and we were having coaching for other reasons. And I thought it was going to be more like, hey, let me watch you work. Let me tell you what you did wrong. And then let me see if you're going to fix what I just told you were doing wrong. I thought it was that kind of coaching, but it was very, very different. And one of these first activities we did was more about our time and energy being sucked dry by these sort of invisible things that we don't think about all the time. And it was my favorite because it really tapped into the energy reserves that we had. It asked me, how much energy do you have right now to do the things that you truly love, the things that matter to you? And I remember I had raised my hand and said, well, dancing is really important to me. And I was trying to remember the last time I danced, either out or in my living room and so how much energy do you actually have to do that right now? And I just thought, it just sounds like work instead of like fun because I'm just drained. Okay, well, what would it be like to have a little of that back? And I was like, I'm in. Tell me what's going on. So when we did this activity, it was perfect timing because I was in the process of going through a divorce, and I was a homeowner, and I bought my first house when I was 25 because it really was important to me to own property. I had a high value on that. But after the divorce, I realized there were so many things that had been taken apart but never put together, or projects that had been started but never finished. And it was draining me. So when I made my what's draining me list, it was gigantic. I had all kinds of things. Well, this isn't finished, and that needs screwing in. That needs painting. That needs to be, the room is painted, but the ceiling never got done. There was a whole list of stuff that had to be finished. Not to mention the things that were mentally draining me. A stack of mail sitting there that I just didn't go through. It was mentally draining me because I was afraid of what was in it. All kinds of things like this. So I made the list, but it didn't get done until I had, a little bit of an emergency. And, sometimes it takes that. It takes the impact of something. And this is a story about a doorknob, which may seem kind of silly. Well, on the list was that I needed to fix the doorknob to the bathroom. The bathroom opened right into the kitchen, and it was the only one bathroom in the house. And it wasn't until I had a friend over who had a little boy who was potty training, because I just never used the door, really. I lived alone, so why close the door, right? Well, it was important, obviously, to this little boy. He'd been taught properly that you shut the door for privacy when you're using it. As soon as I heard the door shut, I was like, oh, he should not have shut the door. Luckily, I had this little tool that would go and open the thing up. And it was in the kitchen, so I was able to get the little guy out, but it took some time. It made me nervous. It made his mom nervous, and it made that little guy in there nervous too. You know, he might have thought twice about shutting the door before using the bathroom the next time. But that activity, I was like, oh my gosh, immediately, I need to get this doorknob fixed. There is no excuse now. It has to get done. And the energy that activity brought me, fixing that doorknob, gave me that. I'm like, wow, I felt more capable. I felt like it didn't take that long to do that. And this thing has been bugging me every time I use the John, ridiculous. So I ended up going back to these things, back to the list rather, and checking these things off. There was a flurry of getting all of this done, and it freed up so much for me. One of the items that was on that list was a threshold that was half finished. And it was just this wooden threshold in between my kitchen and my living room. And it was a small house. So I can't tell you how many times a day I stepped over that threshold. And every single time I stepped over it, it sucked my energy dry. Like, oh, and that's one more thing that's not finished. That's one more, bit of residue from the giant mistake that I was thinking about my divorce and thinking about everything that went wrong. And, it was a complete energy suck. So I unscrewed that thing, I varnished it, and I put it back down. And the time that it took, and it wasn't that long. I just had to let the thing dry overnight, and I put it back down. It totally changed. Every time I stepped over it, instead it was, I can do this. This is great. I did that. I finished that. That's magnificent. We're moving on, and so stepping over that was a giant end to that drain. So sometimes those are things that you're tolerating. Sometimes they're energetic things. Sometimes they really are time things. You might have not started a habit that will save you a gob of time later because you think, I don't have time to teach my kids X, Y, or Z. It's easier for me to just do it myself than to teach them how to do this thing and empower them to move forward. Think about that stitch in time saves 9. And what can the upfront work truly save you in time? If you're always tying your kids' shoes and they're old enough to tie them themselves, take a little bit of extra time and think about how that compounds into giving you extra time later when they can do it themselves, as well as, just the factor of them being empowered to be able to be independent in that. It might be that you clear the table yourself instead of showing the kids how to do it. It might be that you load all the dishes in the dishwasher instead of teaching them how to do it. Who knows? It might be taking the laundry down and sorting it. They could learn how to do that at really young ages. Just take that time up front, and it gives you that time on the other end. So what are those things that are happening? It can save you the emotional time of nagging them, like, oh, nobody ever helps around here. Or, the grief of feeling like you have to do it all. All right. So one of the things I want you to think about, besides just what's draining you, is, how much time do you have? Like, if you wanted to go dancing, how much time do you have in your energy reserve right now? And if it's not that much, what are those things at the end that you want to do? What would you do with that extra time? We talked about 15-minute increments. So how would you spend those 15 minutes with your child, your spouse, yourself, to do some self-care? Think about that and write those things down. What are you worried about right now? And this is, the emotional drains can be some of the strongest. Not just, I don't have time. My time is leaking. But if you're worrying about things, it makes you exhausted by the end of the day, and it takes up time having to replenish yourself. So, ask yourself, what's true about what you're worrying about? Is it something that you can affect? If it's not, what would we like to let it go? Just let it go. I can't do anything about it. If there is something that you can do about a situation, there are a lot of catastrophes right now in our world, natural disasters, and they can be really draining even on those who have not been directly affected. So what can you do? Is watching the news serving you? Maybe it's not. So maybe cut that down. Maybe tune in one time a day and figure that out. Figure out maybe one thing you could do, one place you could donate, or someone you could help, someone you could call and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Is there anything we can do to help you? So if you can't do anything about it, then decide where your involvement needs to be. But if you can do something about it, maybe you need more information so that you can figure that out. So get to the truth about what's worrying you, and maybe you don't need to worry about it at all. Sometimes a phone call is all that takes. All right, another thing, what have you been meaning to take care of? So that list of things that were unfinished in my house, that's a great example of that. Things you've been meaning to take care of. You might add to that. There are phone calls. Maybe you need to make an appointment to have your child's eyes checked, or maybe you have to, make a phone call to somebody who has been on your mind. They keep popping into your mind, but you haven't reached out to them. So reach out to them. Send a text. Send a voicemail. Get a hold of them and see what's going on there. It might be a to-be. We have a lot of to-do lists, but sometimes it's the to-be lists remaining undone that suck our time and energy dry as well. So an example of a to-be would be someone who needs to be forgiven. So how much energy is that taking up? Holding a grudge. Maybe it's to be standing up tall as I straighten my shoulders back. We can give ourselves a whole lot more energy if we're all stacked on top of, our vertebrae are all stacked on top of each other properly. So maybe it's to have better posture. And that's not necessarily a to-do. It's more of a conscious, shift really quickly to be conscious about that. That might be solved by a Post-it note that says, are you sitting up straight? Wherever you might hunch over at your desk. Other things that you might have as to-bes are giving thanks. We can really brighten up a week. We can really turn things around when we choose to be grateful for the things that we have, the things that are available to us, the things that are going well, the things that our kids are doing fantastically, to be grateful for those things. So that's another to-be. Those are things that you might need to take care of. All right, so now you've got this long list, and I saw my husband say, yeah, that list is getting long. Sure, it doesn't mean you have to do the whole thing. After you've made that list, and I suggest just kind of vomiting it out onto either an electronic list or a paper list, and what are those things that are draining you? And this is not a one and done activity. I would suggest doing this activity at least one time a month. And this is scheduling a loose end day. And you know how I said that lots of the projects were just like half done, half this, half that, things you've been meaning to take care of. Great. Well, for the to-dos, schedule a loose end day on a weekend. It doesn't even have to take the whole day. A 4-hour chunk, you can get a tremendous amount of things, a tremendous number of things done. So get that list out and go through the things one by one by one. And sometimes it helps to go, okay, I think this activity is going to take, 15 minutes. And so put that out there, because at the end, if you're like, wait a minute, that didn't take 15 minutes. That was like a 2-hour job. I wasn't fair. So that maybe next time, if that thing comes up on the list again, if you put clean the garage on there and you said, oh, well, that should only take half an hour. Oh, good luck with that. I'd like you to film that one if that's what it takes to clean your garage. Make sure those are chewable bites, things that you can actually achieve. so that you can have that energy of success rather than defeat as you're going through your loose end day. But the energy that the first task getting done that can open up often will fuel the rest of that list, and you really get cooking. Make sure you have some undivided time to devote to it. And a loose end day, like I said, put it on the calendar one time a month so that you can just get a lot of these things done. Sometimes it helps to have a deadline, like we've got company coming. So have that loose end day there. But the list is going to be key. So you don't just sit around and go, oh my gosh. Because yes, crossing things off a list is so exhilarating, right? So make sure if you add extra things during your loose end day, write them down, cross them off. All right, great. Checking out the comments, seeing if there are any questions here. And if you're catching the replay, definitely throw a question in there. Throw something that you've been meaning to take care of in there, and we'll be checking those comments, okay? Great. All right. So have I missed anything? Yeah, the things that are swimming around in your head, once they get on a list, you're going to notice that it frees up some of that time because it almost lets that thing know it's been heard. If we want to personify all the things that swim in our heads, get that thing down on paper and it will stop nagging at you so badly. And keep going. So I wanted to offer up to all of you thank you for coming. Thank you for either being here live or for catching the replay. I want to offer up to you a sneak peek at a time leak tutorial where we're going to go over not just activities like this, but more activities to find out where is your time going? Where is your energy leaking from? So that we can get to the truth about that and get you into more space that is freed up for the things that you love. Spending time with your family, spending time with your spouse, and spending some time on some much needed self-care because we all need it. It's a busy world, but we can make it an intentionally full one. So what I want you to do is take a look here at the time leak tutorial. I am going to drop some links in the comments, but it's pretty easy. My business is Julz of Life, Julz as in zebra, OF as in Frank, and LIFE like life is good. So Julie at julzoflife.com is where you can find me. julzoflife.com/TLT for time leak tutorial is where you can find the notes to this. So just go to that link and I will forward you the notes so that you can have all of the steps that we talked about today, as well as a link to the time leak tutorial coming up that will give you more tips. Totally free tutorial. And I invite you to come and find that time. What you're doing in raising the next generation is so vital to all of us. So definitely take the time to find those 15-minute increments to do the things that you love, to do the things that matter most. I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up. And if you have any questions, like I said, drop them in the comments. I'm Julie Ford with Julz of Life and Parenting Partnerships. Bring your friends.